So, as I said, this session is essentially about creating clarity and momentum in your next chapter. So you're essentially stepping into one of the most fast-moving and dynamic sectors you can do if you're trying to get a job in data. It is full of opportunity, but it's also full of complexity with many different specializations, niches, employers, and expectation levels set for you. So it can be very difficult for you to know what mindset to have, how to apply for jobs, and what else you should be doing to put yourself in the best position possible to get your foot in the door in the data world. The titles can be confusing. The expectations are always shifting as innovation grows and grows at a faster pace. And for many, the question is, how can I actually get started in a data career? So we're going to break this down together in this webinar. This isn't really just a lecture, it is also a game plan if you want to follow it. This means understanding where the opportunities are, making smart choices based on your strengths and interests, and taking real action that positions you to succeed in the long run. Along the way in this webinar, I may share some coaching about your mindsets, uh, especially if you're unemployed for a specifically long time or longer than you expect. It can be very damaging to your mindset, and you need to know how to keep your career progression going, even if it feels like it's stagnating. Confidence, adaptability, and focus are just as important as knowing Python or SQL. Your soft skills cannot be understated, and you do need to practice them and keep them in a good state. When everyone and all of your competitors are really good at Python and SQL, your communication skills and your other soft skills are what will make you stand out to an employer. You can be technically brilliant, but if you feel stuck and if you don't believe in your own momentum, then you won't progress your career or even start your career. So we're building a plan that's essentially both strategic and personal, and one that honors where you are and equips you for where you're headed. So first, a very little bit about me. I'm Rohan Whitehead, and I am the data training specialist at the Institute of Analytics. I had an undergraduate degree in politics and philosophy, and then during the COVID years, I did a master's in data science. Like many after COVID, when the economy was just growing again, I did have a period of time where I really struggled to get a role in data analytics before I joined a startup, and then I ended up at the Institute of Analytics later in my life. And however, it was very difficult for me in that period of not really knowing what to do, how to improve my job opportunities, and how to really get my foot into the door of data. It was a bit demoralizing. But now, if I wish I knew what I did now when back then when I was in that period, because I would have done so many things differently to help me put myself in a position to succeed. There are so many different things that you can do to succeed, especially when you have all the time, you have your whole day free and you're not employed. Just a bit about me. I create the essentially training content and do a lot of the student engagements for the Institute of Analytics. So I do a lot of these webinars and also create training content on governance, on SQL, on Python, on all data science practices and theory that can be found on the IOA website. A few of these slides will have a QR code in the top right corner. This QR code will just take you to the IOA website, especially the membership page, where you can explore how to become a member. Outside of work, my main interests are in reinforcement learning and deep learning of turn-based games. That's what really got me into data science. I played a lot of chess in my childhood, and I was really interested in how we can solve game theory strategy with machines. I was always intrigued by how especially chess engines could look millions and millions of lines into the future and properly solve any position of chess so that it can win it in most scenarios. And that was really my interest. And I built my strength around that interest. And that's what led me to get where I am now. But first, before we really think about getting jobs, we need to understand the playing field that you will be entering. We need to really understand what the field actually looks like. The truth is, data job titles are often very inconsistent. You may see this when you look at job applications and when you do some job applications online. A data analyst role at one company may be called a data scientist role at another company. An analytics engineer in a startup might do more data modeling than an enterprise data scientist. Job titles are very flexible and are used very flexibly in the world of data. However, they do have their own niches and their own sets of skill sets applied to them if they are applied correctly. A lot of times, you'll see job listings for data analyst on the job website, and that is just so that the essentially employer has the flexibility to give you a slightly lower starting salary. That's a kind of neat trick that employers do. Because generally speaking, a data analyst is a more entry-level position. There are very few entry-level data scientist positions because most of them do require industry experience. However, it is still possible to get an entry-level data scientist position, but you'll have to do some things that I'll talk about later in this webinar to really prove your skill sets. So getting confused about the different job titles is normal because data is a discipline that's still maturing. It's been out for quite a while, but in the big picture, working with data is still one of the newer disciplines on the job market. The tooling, the roles, and the expectations are all evolving very fast every year, which means you have to be the one who understands the difference. So I'm just going to walk you through just so you really know what the 5 main categories of data roles are. First, there are data analysts, and these guys are basically the bread and butter of any startup or small to medium-sized enterprise. They focus on answering business questions using data. They'll work with structured data, build dashboards, and write and query with SQL to help teams make data-informed decisions. There will be a strong communication role and do a lot of stakeholder non-technical communication and summarization. Data scientists, on the other hand, are more often about solving more open-ended problems. They build predictive models, work with unstructured data a lot more, and dig deep into statistical and machine learning methods. They have more hypothetical mindsets and more experimental mindsets compared to other roles that are a lot more structured. Data engineers are possibly the most structured role possible. We did a webinar on data engineering yesterday that is now on our YouTube if anyone wants to watch about how to transfer from being a data scientist into a data engineer. But they are a very essential role for organizations. On average, now we get between 5 to 7 data engineers in every big organization for every 1 data scientist. And that's because they are in charge of building the data infrastructure and pipelines that data scientists work on, as well as the whole organization works on. They build the systems that make the above roles, that being data analytics and data scientists, possible. They create pipelines, they manage data architecture, and they make data flow at scale. And the at scale is really important. A large part of a data engineer's responsibility is to allow your pipeline to flow cleanly, even if the demand for your services or the demand for your company's services increases dramatically or the company goes overseas. Data architects are a much more niche role, and you'll see a lot less of these listings on the market, but they operate at a design level. They really understand theoretical data infrastructure as well as business decision for data. They essentially will define how the data is structured, where it's kept, and how the data is accessed across the organization. They may have very strong cloud computing theory and distributed computing principles, as well as really strong business knowledge niche to the sector that they are working in. And finally, data or machine learning operation engineers. These professions mostly focus on deployment and reliability. They make sure models and pipelines run in a production reliably and securely. So hypothetically, a lot of companies now are rolling out chatbots, which are large language model integrations into their own documentation. It will be the data or machine learning operations engineers making sure that those chatbots are actually running efficiently and are not breaking down or misinforming their consumers. Many of the core skills, like Python, SQL, and understanding business logic, are shared between all of these roles. However, the focus, the mindset, and the maturity of each role differs hugely. So when you're looking for jobs and when you're looking at jobs, don't just look at the titles. You need to read the job descriptions and ask yourselves, what kind of problems do you want to solve? What kind of things energize you? Knowing where you fit into the job landscape and what jobs really will suit you is your first big step towards applying with intention and really having a successful career. I'm now very briefly just going to show two slides that really show the differences between the different roles. There is some overlap, but I'm going to compare a data engineer, I think, to a data analyst, and we will see that the roles are overall very different. I'm not going to stay on these slides very long. You can take a screenshot if you want, but here is the responsibilities and expected skills of a data engineer. A data engineer will often use a lot more niche technology and really technology that you generally don't get taught in data analytics or data science masters and undergraduate courses. So these roles and these responsibilities may be a bit more alien to you now. However, they are, as I say, they are essential for organizations and they have very easy career progression once you get started as a data engineer. Your role is very structured. You are doing a lot of communication, but mostly technical communication, not non-technical communication. And you are building pipelines and making sure your data infrastructure in your business flows and scales at size very well. As I've said, data engineers focus on building the infrastructure that allow data to flow smoothly through an organization. The importance of scalability cannot be understated, as well as data pipelines and big data tools such as Hadoop and Apache Kafka, and Kafka. This role is foundational for any data-driven organization, so every organization will require this role once it gains size and traction. On the flip side, here's your data analyst role, and this is the most common entry-level role into the data market. As a data analyst, your primary role is to essentially make sense of raw data and translate it into actionable insights. You have a large technical and non-technical communication element to this role. As it's the most common job on the market for data, for people trying to work with data, and communication is such a large part of the role, you really need to make sure you are keeping your communication skills up to date. And if you don't know how, we'll walk through how to do that a bit later. But your responsibilities as a data analyst include talking through key responsibilities like data cleaning, analysis, and building dashboards for stakeholders. So you're taking technical concepts and technical insights and translating them into clear, non-technical evaluations that stakeholders can take away, thinking that they need to recognize a data analyst's value to an organization is to understand what they are saying clearly and be able to make your own insights based of what they are telling you. Proficiency in tools such as Python, SQL, and Tableau will make a huge difference in this role, and you can learn these on our website or on DataCamp through our website membership or in multiple other places. These are tools that if you've just done an undergraduate course or a master's course, I hope that you have been taught a fair bit because they are extremely useful in the world of data analytics. So those are the two roles, and I was just going to run through them just so you are clear that even though there's a lot of overlap, there is also a lot of differentiation between the roles in data. So going through the jobs and really making sure you understand what you want to do, the problems you want to solve, what kind of skill sets interest you more, is going to help you huge one for job applications, and two, making sure you land with momentum going forward in your first position. The worst case scenario is you apply to be a data engineer, thinking it's going to be like data analytics, you get the role somehow, and then you're there completely lost with no momentum, having to learn everything whilst you struggle with your first job. That's something you really want to avoid, and it does actually happen to a lot of people. And I say that there's absolutely nothing wrong with learning on the job and doing continuous learning. You just don't want to be not confident in your skill set and your ability to achieve in a job you get. Confidence is vital to your improvement. So, but as I say, and as you should know, the goal is not to have it all figured out at this point. There's a myth that if you want to make it in data, you need to land a data scientist title or data scientist role straight out of university. But firstly, that's just simply not true. There are many, many, many routes into data roles. You don't need to start with a technical job at all. You can start in marketing. You can start in pretty much any position. The availability and democratization of resources online where you can learn data skills whilst you work is so huge and broad now that pretty much anyone can make the career change to become a data analyst or a data scientist. Your first job does not decide your career progression. Sometimes a lot of people, whilst they're applying for data roles, they will have to get a different first jobs just to make means, to make some money, and to be able to afford a living. And this is absolutely fine. We're all so lucky that there are resources online, and the IO way provides a lot of these resources to help you learn data, upskill, and feel more confident about your skill set whilst you're in a full-time employment. What is far more valuable is that you start walking a path that makes sense for you. Some people love being close to the decision makers. They thrive when helping stakeholders ask better questions and see insights. If that's like you, then that's a great signal for that you might enjoy analytics or business intelligence. Others get more excited about experimentation, innovation, and machine learning, prototyping new models and prototyping new applications. You may naturally gravitate towards more research-heavy work and model development. This means you'd be more interested in being a data scientist or a machine learning operations-focused role. And then there are those who prefer building systems that other people rely on, really having accountability for the data processes that go on in your organization. If you like being the core foundational spine of an organization and have other people rely on you, you can automate workflows, you can optimize pipelines, you can solve data bottlenecks, then engineering and data engineering oriented work, maybe data architect oriented work would be for you. The point is this, you should follow your curiosity and let your strengths speak. You should try out personal projects, maybe apply for internships whilst you're applying for jobs. Listen to the podcasts that really interest you. Make note of everything that you do, or even volunteer if the opportunity presents itself to you and lets you get tested in different lanes and different parts of the workforce. You don't need to worry about getting boxed in. Careers in data are extremely non-linear. You'll be doing a lot of lateral as well as lateral as well as vertical movements in your career progression. You may start as a junior data analyst, but then become a data engineer, then go to cloud computing, and then become a machine learning engineer. It really depends on the skills you learn, what you choose to learn, and where your interests and business projects take you. Many, many people change lanes as they grow. And what matters now is just about having a direction, not a definition. So when you apply for jobs, it's okay to choose. Just know that you're choosing a starting point, not like a life sentence. You should stay curious and stay open to other opportunities. So it's really easy to focus on technical skills when preparing for your career, but I need to be very clear on this. Soft skills are not optional. In fact, they are what separates a good analyst from great professionals. Communication, collaboration, and leadership are all data skills when they come down to it. If you can explain complex findings clearly, you're more likely to influence decisions. If you can anticipate a stakeholder's concerns, your analysis will be more useful. And if you can take initiative in a team, people will remember you. So how do you build these soft skills? It can be initially quite unintuitive how to practice soft skills when you're not in employment. You can start by practicing how you present your work. Don't just say what you did, you should explain why it mattered. If you're explaining what you're doing on your course or your dissertation, talk about your dissertation to other people. Show your interests and make sure that you can explain to non-technical people what your interests in data are. You should get comfortable speaking to different audiences. Sometimes you'll be teaching, sometimes you'll be explaining, sometimes you'll just be in friendly conversation. What's clear to another data student might confuse a marketing manager. So practice tailoring your messages and tailoring your communications with different kind of tones. If you have LinkedIn, if you have Twitter, you can use these as a platform to really practice communicating interesting facts about data or stuff that intrigues you. There is absolutely no downside to this. You can also build these skills outside of work. You can volunteer, you can do university events, you can do postgraduate events, and you can create short tutorials when you think you understand the skill really well. When I was younger, I used to make short tutorials and do coaching strategies for skills and games I thought I was really good at, and it would help me improve and really help me learn the nuances of the skill that I was making the content for. When you start teaching and communicating to other people, you do really start to understand the ins and outs of the skills a lot more, as well as understanding where other people struggle and where misconceptions really are. They really help. It really helps when you teach to understand and get better at communicating about what you're teaching. I understand many people may not be in a situation to teach or may not have the resources or time to create content such as this. It's just an idea. You can mentor a peer if you want. You can just explain to a friend some core concept if you want. These things might feel really small, but they add up to confidence, clarity, and professional credibility. Remember, companies, for the most part, this may be changing, but for the most part, companies hire people. They don't hire robots. And the most successful data professionals are not just accurate, but they're impactful. They take the company's context, communicate their insights, and make a proper impact. And they bring people along with them. And that is the power of soft skills and what will differentiate you from your competition if you make sure you practice them and are comfortable with them. Now, this is kind of self-explanatory. I'd hope a lot of people know this, but you really need to know yourself and track your growth. You need to know what energizes you, what kind of tasks makes you feel focused and excited, what kind of tasks leave you drained. You need to know which patterns help you choose you need to know these patterns because this will help you choose the right environment and roles, as well as help you understand your strengths and weaknesses. It is equally important to know how you work and to know what your weaknesses are, not so you can feel bad about them, but that you can grow strategically. If you know hypothetically stakeholder management and communication is tough for you, you can practice it. If you avoid documentation, challenge yourself to improve that. Document your journey. Every small thing you do, every improvement, every post, every event you go to, every podcast you listen to, every data course you take, document it. The IOA, us, are releasing a portfolio you can show to employers where you can document all of the things you do to improve your skill sets alongside aligned to a universal, essentially analytical framework that employers do value when they assess candidates. But you should keep a record of your products. Have a GitHub, make a LinkedIn if you don't, have an active Twitter if you want. Not just write down what you built, but you should write down what you learnt, what you'll do differently next time, a cool thing you took out of it, leadership and communication skills that you learnt on the way. It doesn't have to be public, but it should be clear and honest. This kind of reflection is gold, not just for interviews, but for your own self-direction. So awareness and action equals growth generally. And when you track your growth, you build your confidence. You realize how far you've come, and that's what will keep you motivated when things get tough. This is essentially just the foundation of a resilient, self-aware career, and it will set you apart from other people. So this is a fairly long slide, but this is about talking about the postgraduate kind of plateau. And this slide essentially addresses something that affects a large percentage of graduates, particularly in data science and analytics. And what do we mean by this? So after finishing university or completing a master's program, there's often a surge of initial motivation. You're applying for jobs, tweaking your CV, maybe even building out a portfolio. But if responses are slow, and they can be slow, and interviews can be scarce, or jobs just aren't materializing quickly enough, many people will lose steam. Weeks will become months, and growth you experience during your academic journey will begin to stagnate. And this is what we refer to as the plateau, where skill development slows, confidence drops, and professional momentum stalls. So, how do we avoid this plateau? How do we keep going when it's so rough? Firstly, we want to keep our skills fresh, and the best way to do that is with continuous learning and personal projects. One of the most effective ways to maintain your edge is to start building a personal project. Choose a domain you're passionate about, maybe sports analytics, maybe climate data, or something in public health. Find open data, look at Kaggle, look at many different repositories for open data, define a goal, and start building a project. The purpose isn't just to code and analyze, it's to create a structured experience, something with a problem, a process, and a result. Use GitHub to host your work and document your findings. Learn to communicate about what you've done and how it's helped you improve so that employers can see your skills, not just see them on a CV, but see your practical skills with real life application. It's sometimes helpful to publish a blog or LinkedIn post about the projects that you are doing. It helps motivate you and brings publicity to the fact that you are actively keeping your skills fresh. Employers do really care about this. This helps you stay technically sharp, but also gives you content to share with employers. They're far more likely to be impressed by someone with a real project than a list of courses on your CV. Courses are really good too, but they're good to build your own skills. Without accreditation at the end or certification at the end, employers will not pay a lot of notice to courses. Oh, and secondly, there's continuous learning, and this is what you should be doing throughout your career as a data analyst, even if you do have a job. Continuous learning is so important to the world of data because you have so much competition from other applicants and innovation is moving so fast that you are expected to keep up with new tools and processes so that you can be efficient for your organization. Unfortunately, graduation does not mean that you are done learning. You can go on that holiday you wanted to go, you can chill with friends, but the but in fact, the learning that happens after graduation is often more personalized, more strategic, and more valuable to employers as you know your own strengths, weaknesses, and game plan. Now is the time to really solidify your fundamentals. Python, SQL, and basic statistics. Make sure you don't forget those over a plateau of not really keeping your skills fresh. And explore the areas that truly interest you. For me, it was machine learning and reinforcement learning. So when I was unemployed, I did a lot of work looking into that. You don't need to pay for an expensive boot camp. Platforms such as DataCamp and IOA that you could get DataCamp for very cheap via, Kaggle Learn, or the Institute of Analytics Learning Hub, we all offer high quality, affordable, and often free resources that fit around your schedule. At a minimum, make sure you come to these webinars, read some blogs, and read some podcasts and listen to some podcasts. These will all help you keep your skills fresh, your knowledge fresh, and motivate you in the long run. Also, just think a bit about specialization. You want to learn some cloud-based tools, time series forecasting, visual storytelling. You don't need to learn everything, but get really good at a few really cool skills that you really enjoy, and this will be your competitive edge when applying for jobs. You need to develop depth in one area whilst maintaining breadth across the basics. And finally, there's prep for interviews. Most jobs in data involve some form of practical tests, at least job application processes, especially in early career roles. This could mean taking home a data analysis challenge. You need to build a dashboard and do a presentation. Maybe a live SQL assessment, where you're asked questions and asked to query a SQL relational database using SQL, the standard query language, to get results. or even a multi-step interview involving exploratory analysis and stakeholder presentations. These are all very common now in the job application process. These can be intimidating if you're out of practice. That's why platforms like LeetCode and Code Wars are available, as well as the IOA runs student sprints that help simulate this experience. They keep your platforms like LeetCode and Code Wars do keep your problem-solving muscles sharp and your coding and software engineering skills sharp. You don't need to become an algorithmic wizard. This isn't like computer science theory, but you do need to be comfortable manipulating data under pressure and in a competitive environment. Ideally, you try doing about 15 to 30 minutes of coding practice about 3 times a week. Maybe treat it a bit like a workout, and over time, this will build fluency and confidence in yourself. So, in summary, avoiding the postgraduate plateau is about momentum. Even if it's slow, even if you're not employed yet, personal projects will keep you engaged. Continuous learning keeps you evolving. Interview practice will keep you prepared. And most importantly, this mindset gives you kind of ownership over your own journey. You're not waiting to be hired to improve. You're always developing yourself regardless of your position in life. And you're always putting yourself in a better position to succeed. This is incredibly important. I'm quickly just going to show you some of the resources we have available to you before doing the last few slides. So here we just see DataCamp, and this is basically everything that DataCamp offers. They offer courses in pretty much every position you could be interested in applying to, and they also offers tracks in pretty much every tool on the market. It can offer super niche tracks such as forecasting analysis, I'd say. Uh, so it doesn't really matter what you were looking to learn. They do have They have courses. Bring in pause. They have courses in pretty much every data skill, and these are hands-on practical courses that you can do in their virtual coding environments on their website. You don't need to download everything, and everything is explained to you very clearly. You do get access to DataCamp for free through the IOA membership subscription, and also through the IOA membership, you get a lot of learning content. You get specialized exclusive webinars, resources, cheat sheets, a lot of blogs, some podcasts, and a lot of these webinars as well. So as well as use of the IOA portfolio and networking and job finding capabilities. So I can't really recommend the IOA enough. Of course, I know it. I am an IOA employee, so I kind of have to. But I generally think that IOA is really helpful to people who are approaching their plateau or their postgraduate plateau or plateauing in life a little bit. It can provide so much momentum to your ability to progress your career. Now, back to the slides. There is often a question about generative AI. In 2023 and 2024, tools like ChatGPT, Midjourney, even Jasper have exploded in visibility and impact. And naturally, students and graduates are asking, do I need to be able to be using AI to be employable in data? And the truth is, you don't need to be an AI expert at all. You do not need to be able to fine-tune models or write machine learning pipelines using large language models, but you do need to be AI aware and AI knowledgeable. And what do I mean by that? So let's think of this as a ladder as shown on the slides. AI unaware is at the very bottom, and it just means you're disconnected from current trends. And this is a risk, that's a risk in a tech-driven industry. You absolutely do not want to be AI unaware. You want to be able to talk about AI if you're asked in an interview or asked on the job, and you want to be able to know how AI applies itself to your business or how it could apply itself to your business in the future. AI aware means that you understand the general capabilities and the limits of tools such as ChatGPT, GitHub Copilot, or Google Bard. This is a good place to be and where I expect most students to be after graduating. An AI knowledgeable person means you've used them practically, maybe to debug code, summarize documentation, or write an outline for a blog. Generally speaking, this is where your prompt engineering skills should be quite good. You maybe have done a course in prompt engineering or really understand how to get the best out of the prompts that you give AI to automate workflow. An AI practitioner is a bit more hands-on, and this means that you can integrate generative AI tools into your data workflow meaningfully, whether it be integrating a large language model into your documentation or your company documentation, or building a chatbot for consumer-facing business problems. And finally, an AI researcher, and this is basically a specialist territory, and it's not required at all for entry-level roles unless that's your goal. So where you want to be as a graduate is somewhere between knowledgeable and a practitioner. And this means that you know how to use AI to save time, you know when not to trust it, you're aware of hallucinations, ethical limitations, and data risks, and you're experimenting. You've tried using it on your own learning or workflow. What's most important is that you don't ignore it. You don't have to center your identity around AI. In fact, I'd recommend you don't center your identity around AI, but you need to understand how it might enhance your productivity or shape your future roles. Remember, awareness isn't the same as dependency. Being curious and capable around generative AI shows that you're future facing, and that's a valuable signal to any employer. Finally, I'm just going to run you through what a typical application process is when applying for a role in data analytics. I'm just going to very quickly go through the different steps. This won't take long at all. But first, there's the introductory recruitment call. This is where a third-party recruiter will generally recognize whether you are fit for the role that you have applied for. After that, for big organizations, they will send you to online tests. These will be reasoning, maths, and basic Python tests, as well as workplace logic, which can be quite confusing. This really only occurs for big tech and finance firms, but is a very efficient way for them to filter out applicants that don't fit the bill. The workplace logic tests in particular can be very difficult, but we do have resources on the IOA website to help you pass those workplace logic multiple choice tests. Thirdly, this will be your formal interview and call. This is where your communication skills will really come into play, your ability to prove your skill sets, any projects you've done, your LinkedIn, your GitHub will come into play at this point. If you can sell yourself really well and are confident in your skills, you should be in a really good position for the formal interview. Fourth stage, you'll get a set assignment. This is what I talked about earlier. You may have to do some exploratory analysis, maybe a stakeholder presentation. Sometimes it will just be quick fire SQL questions. However, you need to be confident and prepared to do this. Sometimes you'll have a week to do it. Sometimes you'll only have a few days. This is typically for the assignment that you take home. You're given access to an unsorted database and you're asked, given a certain context, to provide solutions, maybe a dashboard with visualizations and a presentation on the insights you've gained from that unsorted database. So you'll be expected to clean it, wrangle it, sort the data, and then create visualizations on it. And finally, and this is at the very end of the process, you may get a meet the team call. This is that you generally have a verbal offer by this point, and this is just making sure that you blend with the team well and that you have not done a massive red flag on your CV. This is generally what I expect the application process to look like. Of course, there may be deviations. Some companies may have multiple formal interviews. Other companies may have a couple set assignments, depending on the competition and how many applicants there are. So what's important is that you are confident in the skills that we've talked about, you know yourself, and you are continuously learning and putting yourself in the best position to improve. This is just the QR code, takes you to your to our membership page if you are interested in exploring the IOA further, or the IOA membership further, and everything we have to offer, including data camp and our own resources. This is now the end of the webinar. If you do have any questions, please feel free to put them in the question and answer in Zoom, and I will respond to them. If not, thank you for joining me, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.